I want to start with something a bit more historical and go into something a bit more modern day. So this book is an old one. This is the Strathmore watercolor sketchbook. And this sketchbook was something I actually used a lot for some reason in that time period. One, it was because of the watercolor. I liked that a lot. This book is falling apart now. It's been in archives on my shelf for many number of years, but this is the first book that I used to create the Dynamic Bible back in 2016. The Dynamic Bible essentially is a collection of lecture notes of all my visuals and teaching methods that have been now curated into a single book from all the classes I taught at the Art Center and many different schools. So for about 6 months, I started collecting all that data. So that means certain sketchbooks for me can have very much a purpose, an application of not only just drawing, but to be able to produce something with it. Now these are all the originals, straight in with pen, with watercolor, and I scanned these and I printed them directly into the book. The only thing I edited was some of the text, which I wrote down as I went along, but this was the original Dynamic Bible book that I made back then. But the thing about this, to be more frank, this book wasn't intended to be actually sold as a printed book. It was only suggested I do so from people like on Instagram or friends who said, you should really print this and sell it. I purely did this for myself at first. The reason why was because I had been teaching for about 3 or 4 years at this time. And I then asked myself the question, do people understand what the hell I'm talking about? So what I wanted to do was jot everything in terms of notes and processes onto the page for myself. I gotta see it. So once I saw it, I was like, okay, well, I want this and I want that. I don't want this. I was able to somewhat edit the process, but also realize what I was actually sharing. But as I was doing it, people saw it as a nice collection of all the notes I was doing in a classroom, which wasn't available outside of Art Center. So that's why people kept pushing it, make a book, make a book. And around that time, I told people, no, I'm not printing a book.
Sure?
This is for me and for my own experience. But eventually, over time, as people talked to me more, I realized, well, there seems to be quite a bit of an audience for it. Well, that's where I made a Kickstarter, made 2 books of these originals, put it together myself, edited it, and also then, of course, did all the work, distribution, marketing, Kickstarter, and successfully campaigned it.
Yay!
So it started from just a simple question of, do people understand my note-taking? And I wanted to see for myself, and I completed 2 of these books in 6 months, less than 6 months. This is the original Dynamic Bible. From this, which is all the typical kind of sketches and drawings that I do, processes of shape, form, observational sketching, a lot of them were done on site. I would go to the museum, I would go to a cafe, I would sit down in some location, and I'll draw these things by looking at them. This is at the LA Naturalistic Museum. Obviously the foundations, structures of muscle memory, line, shape, movement, form, volume, texture, surface. This is all dynamic sketching 101. So this is 2016 now, all right? So the stuff I look back on now, which has been many, many years, I still look at this and like, I kind of like that still. That's kind of nice drawing right there. I'm sure many of you guys will look back on your old sketchbooks and be like, man, I don't want to look at that. It's so bad. But I have sketches that go back even further, even when I was at the time at Art Center in my 20s. And I still had drawings. I'm like, I remember that drawing. I remember when I did it. I remember where I was. I remember how it felt. And I still like it. You have to have those kinds of experiences and moments of you liking your work also, even if it is old. And even if it's aesthetically or visually somewhat like whatever, the experience of doing it, that moment of that time, is something you have to hold on to as a memory. And so for me, being at these places, this is at Travel Town here in LA. I love being there. Being present to those machines, being inside them, feeling the weight in the materials, knowing the weather, everything. That was that 2016 book. From this, I want to start to switch it up a little bit, something a little bit different. This is a bit more unique, it's small, but very intentful also of use. Typically, you see all of these books around me. I have a whole collection of books around right now, but they have specific applications at times. This book was applied towards the idea of note-taking for dynamic sketching. This is traveling. So when I go somewhere, I would take a book like this with me. This is made by, back in the day, was known as Midori, and this is now called the Traveler's Journal. Leather bound, and what I would do is I would collect tons of stuff. You know, whether it's actual drawings or stickers or stamps or whatever the case is, observational drawing, sketching. This is from 2000, I believe, 17. So this is really only a year after this book. So this isn't something I did later in period, but I have different kinds of sketchbooks and I do draw sometimes differently as well too. Still observational drawing, locational studies. This is in, I believe, Italy, looking at the fountains. collecting materials, picked up birch, drew on the birch bark, clipped it in there. I found this squirrel. Like I didn't want to draw on the paper, but I found this piece. It's like, oh, I'll draw on that. Ideas and stories, concepts, observations, weird imagination. Collecting more material. This is at the Arboretum or Huntington Library, finding picture plants. I went to then observation. I write down notes. I write down observations. I don't just draw, I experience, but I also then write. Our desire to understand and organize the living world has been a story of wonder, curiosity, and discovery. Observation has led to text and imagery that have matched changing perceptions about nature's order. Stuff like that I just find to be interesting in terms of perception. Observation again, tons of observation. Insect collections. This is at the Bug Fair at the LA Natural History Museum. From the Bug Fair, collecting cards, meeting people. 2017, traveling to Australia, going to New Zealand. I went to a kind of a workshop on how to do taxidermy on insects and bugs. So this is preparation on tarantulas. We had live little specimens, we had to gut them, we had to prepare them, stuff them, put them on a mount. So I took all the notes and drew them out in the process. My travels towards Australia. Where am I going? What am I doing day one? What am I doing day two? So this is my actual literal journal I'm using day to day, picking up flora, fauna, that kind of stuff. Hair, fur from animals. Dinners with friends, different locations, Disneyland. So I take it with me everywhere, under my armpit, just kind of carrying it around, collecting it, traveling with it. I also have a mini version. Aww. A book within a book, and yes, it does have sketches in it, okay? Yes, it does have drawings inside, and it has a little insect. This is the Traveler's Journal. From this, let's also transition to another kind of book. Small again, we'll get bigger as we go. Scale varies for me. I have big sketchbooks and small sketchbooks. Traveling books, intent for producing, for publishing, but also purely for the idea of visual themes. And it's a rice paper, and it opens up as such. You see the different thematic nature of like aquatic themes, but the thing is that this book extends. And so as an accordion book, it's not like a single page where it's isolated to a composition. I have to think about how it transitions to the following page. So you could treat it as an individual section, but because it's also then connected, I want to make sure that the imagery transitions and also envelops into the next one. And it goes on, and then it goes on. These are travels. This is where I was in Paris, went to Versailles, studied some sculptures, observational drawing. And it goes on, and then it goes on. I saw birds and ravens. Oh, I want to draw those. Turned them into dinosaurs. Then I thought about cavemen. And I read books on civil wars. My intention and attraction goes everywhere. History, science, biology, observation. I had to draw Godzilla at some point. Because I thought, man, I don't know what to draw right now. I went from Abraham Lincoln to General Lee. I thought, man, I don't know what to draw next. When in doubt, go to Godzilla. And this accordion kind of collapses in on itself. And I think, okay, I got, it's done. This was about maybe a couple of months of drawing. But no, we're not done. We got to go to the other side. So we flip it, and we continue on the other end, and we do more, and we do more, and more, and more. Studies from referencing, studies from memory, studies from also imagination, building structures or architecture, small scale, big scale, thinking about positive space and negative space. I'm not trying to just fill up everything. I want to design as I'm drawing also, not design the actual thing, but design the page of read and transition. Is it telling a story? Not so much, but it is somewhat telling a story about my experiences, things of thought, and it goes. Here is a 5-point perspective.
Peter will be releasing a demo on 5-point perspective on this channel, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it. And if you want more Peter Hahn, go to proko.com/perspective because he is a guest instructor for the perspective course.
And that's that accordion book. This was my very first accordion book. I had never drawn one before. And once I opened it, I realized I don't know how to use this thing. And I had to solve it. I was like, okay, well, all I got to do though is try to find a way to go from one page to another. And I learned, and then I kept doing more. Then I found another book. This is coming from Australia. This book is made by a company called Etcher. This is also an accordion book. So I start with observations of things like airplanes. But then I thought, well, I like modeling too. So I drew myself modeling building this thing. Then I deconstructed the actual airplane. This is the Corsair on this side. This is a P-40 Warhawk on this end. All the little elements that go into it, playing with perspective, overlaps, details, and it goes on. And it goes on, and so forth. A big part of this is about being able to play with the idea of not just this being a two-dimensional piece of paper, but I can push back and forward. This goes this direction, up this way, back. This has a perspective back over here, coming forward, this direction, following this way, towards the heads of the wolves at the tail. This skull structure mimics the mirroring of that motion, back up into this motion of the cassowary, and so forth again. So each component is also navigating and transitioning and helping your eyes to know where to go. How am I doing all this? I don't know if I have a direct answer to that. I feel it. I didn't have a class on how to make sketchbooks and how to draw in sketchbooks. It's just that I have fun with this stuff, right? With play, it comes natural. Again, evolution of process. The process becomes a big part of this. How do I show one image that transitions to another? Well, maybe I show multiple of them. Maybe I'll break it down for you, right? Now I'll do it again. Now it's about repetition. Now it's about consistency. Interests call my attention. Now it became sports, NBA, arm wrestling. I love arm wrestling. I've loved this since I was a kid because I watched Sylvester Stallone's Over the Top. That's a great movie. I don't care what anybody says. It's awesome. Consistently, I then opened up another accordion book. I kept going. I must have filled up 5 of these in a year. And this is not only the book I'm carrying. This is on top of 2 or 3 other books I have. So I go through transition or rotations. This then became monster themed. Godzilla again, creatures, and then Ultraman. This one was very interesting because this was a point in which I had a bit of a dealing of questioning on how to maximize or push things for myself. Currently this year, a big portion of my talk has been about trying to find my next evolution of growth. And it became more about slowing down. At this point, which was a couple years ago, my emphasis of focus was something else. And it wasn't perspective per se, but it was about being able to contort, stretch, and pull. And I drew Ultraman over here, but this one back here I really love. And it was about stretching it this direction and that direction. Even with this character, which some people may know, Tikkaman, the old model version. Pulling, stretching, proportionally extending. More arm wrestling. I want to tell you, if you really want to challenge, draw arm wrestling figures. It is one of the hardest things to figure out. And the reason why it's so hard, because when most people draw arm wrestling figures, it's equal. Equal competition, meaning the arm is straight up and they both have equal force being put into it. But in arm wrestling, it's tug and war. There's going to be one of dominance and one of submission. So where do I put the torque, the power pushed through where the other guy's being strained? This build of the composition and the perspective and the figure and the pose is one of the hardest things you can do, especially when it's out of your mind. And this is out of my head. Why I found this to be difficult is because I found a drawing in a comic, a manga, one of my favorites, Battle Angel Alita. In Alita, there's a sequence where she is in kind of a scrap town and she goes through and arm wrestles a character named Jashigan. It was awesome because all the characters have these crazy engines on their arms and stuff like that, but the way that guy composed arm wrestling, amazing. And you think something simple as that would be really difficult, but it's hard as hell. This is on a deck at the USS Midway in San Diego, this structure here. But then I added the monsters and creatures in the background. As we close this one up, we flip to the other side, we go again. 2022, this is a couple years ago. Dinners at Comic-Con, friends and people, observations of vehicles that transition to the horses. I think about horsepower, mythology, observation. So the observation fuels a lot of the stuff. This was my take on the lore from Tolkien's world, playing with patterns and shapes, everything about transition and evolution, going from one creature, one couple of different iterations. Oh, maybe I'll turn it into a fetus, and then I turn it into an egg. De-evolve it. Fun stuff. Let's switch it up again. Let's go larger format. I found this at an art store in Austria, and I loved the paper. What I loved about it was that it laid flat anywhere I opened it. And it has to do with the awesome binding. And I loved the paper surface, and it was blank, so I drew on the cover of this. And it was a space guy with all this squid work, and it goes to the spine, and then it goes to the back. This one was beat to craft, but I drew a lot in this one as well too. This was at a time I was really studying a lot from Mongolian culture, a lot of observation, studies upon studies. Mostly pen work, a lot of marker studies as well too. Brush pens, constant observation. There are hundreds of pages in this. But I would say at this point in this year, from the things like I was talking about earlier in terms of where I'm pushing things, here was all about idea of camera and being able to interact figures. And I'm drawing daily. Now, some people will ask, why don't you draw on the other side? We seem to be only drawing on one end. And the reason was because I know that I might end up using some of this content to print. So if I'm drawing the other side, the cleanup is a mess. Because I scan it and you can see some of the pieces coming through. So normally I would put a white piece of paper underneath it and scan it. But if there's transparency or you see it drawing the other side of it, it's a nightmare. So I'm just preparing for that basically. Collections of work that could be used to be printed. So I draw on mostly one side. So my theme and my subject matter is hugely varied. You've seen it so far already. Figurative work, creatures and animals, vehicles and machines, and stylistic cartooniness to serious monsters and creatures. More realistic proportioning, cybernetics to organics. It's all over the place. So then it goes into the idea that it's not necessarily the subject matter that I'm drawn to, it's the very act of visualizing, drawing that I'm drawn to. That's what I love doing the most. So then the subject doesn't really matter to me because I saw them all very similarly because it comes from the dynamic sketching approach. Subotai from Conan the Barbarian. Observational drawings. Inspiration from one idea, expanding to a story. This is about dehorning of rhinos, poaching. This is actually at a dinner, Kim Jong-gi. This is CTN, one of the last CTN shows that we did before we went to Lightbox. And Carl Kapinski, Nicholas Namiri, Miss Jizu. That was Kim Jong-gi. A couple of other artists hanging out. Jong-gi. This is not mine. This is Kim Jong-gi. So I have a lot of guests that will come in here and I will collect sketches too. I love doing that. Draw on my sketchbook, please. As you guys would walk around, can you sketch in my book? I did that same as well. Even now I'll do it. Carl. And then mine. So I get energized. Man, I'm sitting next to these guys and they're drawing in my book and now I want to draw more, right? This is from a Katsuya Terada gallery show. Saw him drawing while he's explaining and sketching as well too. He drew in that for me a little bit. And then I did an iteration after that. So this was about maybe, I would say, a year of process drawing fully. Here's more study-based methods. Thumbnailing, breaking down shapes. I will still do them at times. All this stuff would have been done with things like fountain pens, brush pens, not so much on ballpoint. You can see there's not a lot of pencil here. It's mostly ink, trying to expand on interiors and perspectives, creating immersion. A character that most of you may not know, Scud, the disposable assassin. Yeah, awesome character. I grew up with him in high school. Rob Schrab, the artist. Always Monkey Kings. Next, cowboys. Observation. Observation. Exteriors, interiors, the buildings. More character development. And a really good book. I love the paper quality. It drew really nice. This is in the Pantheon in Rome. But as you can see, just the level of intensity in terms of how much I'm drawing, page for page for page, as I'm also mixing these sort of books in rotation with this one. Familiar characters. This is an individual I met in Africa. I was out there several times. I started in 2019. I went back in 2022, 21, and I was there last year as well too in Kenya. And I would go out there to observe animals, do a lot of photography, and met some really great people. This guy's Moses, that's his name. And he was our driver, Maasai. Amazing people. I found cheetahs out there. 5 brothers, famous, that lived in the Masai Mara. Man, when you see these animals in the wild compared to the zoo, completely different experience. I had never seen cheetahs as big as the ones I saw out there. And these brothers were famous. And when I saw them, we spent a day searching for them at first. And we found them in the morning at 10 a.m. And they were just waking up. We got there and they were under the shade of a tree. And as soon as they got up, they started stretching. They're stretching and stuff like this, and they will start walking together in a group, and they'll start marking their territories. And in the background were hundreds of herds of zebras and giraffes. And we will follow them, taking photographs. And they will start to kind of walk in single file. They get closer and closer to those animals. You think, wow, we're gonna see a hunt? And then 2 or 3 of them will start running, and they'll start chasing after these animals. But they weren't really going full speed. You can tell they would run and then stop, and then gate and then come back around. And 2 others would go out and chase and then come back around. They were training. They were doing exercises. They were just warming up. And so this image was inspired by this idea of runners. They're stretching, getting ready, the 5 brothers. And then they left. They went down this ravine, ran up this 40-foot cliff, went to the other side, and went to go hunt. It's a crazy experience watching that. The energy of speed. the cheetahs. And these were fun characters inspired by known devices, the Walkman. And I turned it into a character. So I take one inspiration of design, how do I break it down based on shape and also color? And I plugged in those visuals into a character. The Game Boy. The Nokia phone. Shape design, elements of what's on the keys. The Atari. 64. Big controller on the back backpack. These are the buttons on the controller too. Tamagotchi. It's just fun. Exercises all the time, right? Let's do one more big one. This sketchbook came from Italy. It was made by a company called Epica. They make a certain kind of paper in Italy, which is really amazing. And it's this very ragged, hand-pressed paper made in a certain region of Italy. And I ordered this book, and it was about $150. And so when you buy a sketchbook, of course, you're like, you know, I'm sure you have a sense of like delicacy to it. You don't want to ruin it, right? You want to do really good drawings. But, you know, when you, let's say you buy a book that's like $150, $200, you may not even want to touch it. But anything I buy, I gotta use it. And so I started using this book. Amazing paper. This is from 2022 as well. Big format. I love the bigger formats here. Really fun to work on. A little bit of texture, mostly fountain pen, felt pens, and also brush pens. This is from that Prey movie, Predator. Studies of clouded leopards. Observational study at the aquarium. So I'm hand carrying this thing, okay? Taking it to like museums and different places in Africa again. This is Studies of the Lions in the Mara, live. And so this book feels very different in comparison to a book like this one, because this became more about the process of study, but this is more about the single imagery. So this is what I don't consider as a sketchbook. This is more of a drawing book, an illustration book. Sketching and drawing to me are two separate things. Sketching, I am trying to understand something, problem solve through proportion, line, shape, perspective. This, I'm observing, but I know what I want to do with it. I am now illustrating it, playing with materials, playing with theme and visuals, but still single imagery. So I don't consider these sketches per se. They're more illustrations. I still play with the imagination, of course. I could be adventurous in that way, but still, most of the times, single imagery. A lot of play upon space still, because I have now more space to work within, trying to consider the idea of movement, pushing scale, elevating action, and orc with marker. This is with the Olo markers back over there. Studies of characters. I love doing movie studies. Django. Abstractions of shapes, just movement. The day Kim Jong-il passed away. So when I got the news of Kim Jong-il's passing, I was stepping outside my door to go to New York Comic Con in 2022. I was literally walking out the door to go to the Uber, and I got the phone call, cancel your Uber. Cancel New York Comic Con, because he was in the hospital. And once I got that call, I already knew. I knew what was about to happen. So I sat on my couch and I waited 4 or 5 hours and I got the call. This is at 4 in the morning. And I waited and they called me back and said he passed. And after that, I stayed up and the show was canceled. On the weekend, I just processed it and that was the drawing that I did afterwards. The thing I imagined was, what the hell did he see when he passed? You know, that's why all these elements are things that he's experienced, him looking through his eyes. I love the Hellraiser, by the way. One of my favorite horror movies, Hellraiser. So when I watched the new one, I was like, oh, I actually loved it. It was cool. The Thing, crustaceans, weird stuff. This is the time I think Monster Pillars was coming around. Sport players. I love, you know, people that work in sports. Story and action. Always imagination. And this isn't stuff where it's like premeditated ideas of like, oh, I want to draw this, and I sit down and I do it. Most of the times I open it up, and it's like, right there, I just start drawing. I just make a decision. Observation. Of course, observation helps the most. Watch some dog sledding in Jackson Hole. Arm wrestling again. I did one iteration before this one, and to be honest with you, I felt like it wasn't that strong. I did one version of it, and I was watching a match, and I drew this out of my head, and I felt something was missing. It just didn't have that intensity, so I had to do it again. In those situations, repetition, you gotta go after it. So I wanted to push it way more intensive. I pushed the camera angle for shortening, got the closer perspective from this to that. And then I felt satisfied. Okay, now I can move on. No more armors today. And go into something else, you know? It constantly improves and constantly evolves. I like this one, probably out of this whole book. This is my favorite drawing in this book. Is Ultraman. I don't know why I like it so much. I think it's one because of how it felt when I did it. I love the imagery in terms of movement. I like the visceralness of it, the texture of the creature, the violent nature of it as well too. I think it's super intensive. It's not Ultraman really, you know, but it kind of is as well too. So I don't know, there's something about that drawing. When I look at it again, it's like, man, I like that one a lot. You gotta have those moments. Look back on your work and like, man, I love it. And I wanted to do it again with a different character. I don't like this one as much. I enjoy doing it. I don't want to say I hate it, but I feel like the outcome was more natural on the other one. This one was forced. Observation. Grogu when he's older. Observation. Wildlife studies of the Yellowstone. Bighorn sheep. Familiar characters. I love Silver Surfer, and I did a study of this one. I thought, I want to tell a story. So I did a comic page. It's very, very kind of like all over the place at times. It jumps like crazy, because as a personal book, it's just personal studies and things of imagination. And my mind wanders quite a bit. It goes from one theme to another one. So this one was not so thematic based. The accordion books tend to be a little bit more that way because of the unifying kind of nature of evolution. But this one became more about the singular experience per page. Swamp Thing. This is in Abu Dhabi. I was in Abu Dhabi last year doing a Comic-Con show. Went to the great, the big dunes out there, the sand. It was scary, but awe-inspiring. When I say scary, it's like imagine yourself being in the ocean and not in a boat. Floating in the ocean sounds scary to me. And that's what it felt like being in the dunes in Abu Dhabi. Endless sand. Terrifying, but also mesmerizing at the same time. Conan the Barbarian. Study the leopard in Masai Mara. Live, out there. The many birds I love to observe. My take on Lucifer, which I really like that iteration. Carry that on as additional consistent pieces. So in sketchbooks, when something captures you, when something stops you, or even when someone tells you, hey, that's a really cool piece. When I recognize that moment or have that data, then I capitalize. I take that and I did it again. Oh man, people like that one a lot too. I did it again. And until I exhaust that area of exploration, then I move on. I have to exhaust it. Sometimes something goes in my mind, either because of observation or a thought, and it will not go away until I've put it on the page. I have to express it. I have to expunge it onto the page itself. That's how some of this stuff works. This is right now. This is the book I'm using currently, day to day. It's a raggedy old book. I bought this in Utah, found it at a random shop. It was sitting on a shelf, no price tag, no brand. I have no idea what the hell this thing was. I picked it up and the paper was like yellowish and ragged. I was like, man, this thing is junk. But I love it so much. And it felt nice. And it smelled like a basement, an attic with old stuff sitting in there for decades. That's what this thing felt like. This thing was a character. And it was like, holy crap, who are you? You know? And I opened it up, it's like, well, there's nothing in this. And I want to maybe like tell a story or capture more things and work with this book, this character. And to me, inanimate objects even speak to me. You know, I talked about earlier relationship with materials. When I draw paper to pens, I resonate with them. You know, they speak to me because I'm building this sort of like physical relationship of movement, pressure to speed, line to story, thoughts of imagination to observation, and I'm archiving it onto the page, and this paper is giving that to me. It's rough paper, super absorbent, handmade, pressed. I have no idea who made it. I don't know where it came from, but man, I love it. Again, more animals, mustangs and cheetahs in Africa. Visiting Tombstone, Arizona. And every time people pick this up, they always tell me, where did you buy that sketchbook? Like in terms of the art in it, you know, they thought this is something I bought. It's like, oh, this is my sketchbook, I drew these things. Another question I get is, did you make it? Did you make it yourself? Now, I've never made a sketchbook, but I love finding books like this. You know, the produced books by a company are great, But again, I love character. That's why I love things that are handmade, people that are independent, that create things. And I also collaborate with them. Sculptors, jewelry makers, fashion people, you know? Anybody that works in a creative field that has the same level of passion. I love working with them, especially when it comes to this idea of handmade stuff. This is from 22 to 23 now. So this is a little bit longer. The amount of pages in this is massive. Because it looks not as, it's about as thick as the previous one, the gray one. But the paper is a little bit thinner. It's about the same size, but it's just like sandwiched. You can peel it apart. It's like layers of onions. And the more I think I've gone through it, there's like endless amount of pages. It doesn't seem to end. And there's something weird about that to me. Because to be honest with you, I thought this sketchbook I would have finished much earlier. And I've been working at the sketchbook for a year now, non-stop drawing. But then I get to a certain point, it's like, why are there so many pages left? It doesn't seem to end. But then I'm starting to love that because like, I hope this is an internal sketchbook. I hope this is eternity for me. It's this constant relationship that I have with this book and it won't stop. And I think I get to a point where it's like, I'm getting close and I'm getting close. And it's like, holy crap, I have still so many pages left over. And it feels so good. But of course, the experiencing of finishing a sketchbook is something you need to do. I've shown you many sketchbooks now. And typically, again, I'm finishing up to 10 to 12 sketchbooks a year. So you gotta have at least even one to know what that feels like, you know? That satisfaction of like, I carried it through, this is a character in itself. Each of these books are individuals on my shelf and I know who they are. So whenever I approach my bookshelf and I see the book, it's like, I remember you. And I open it up again, it's like, I remember those moments. So that level of value is so much greater than, not monetarily, personally, as growth as a person, right? I love this page here. One of my favorite things, Dino Riders. As a kid in the 80s, you guys probably don't even know it, but I grew up with Dino Riders. It was a toy. Dinosaurs with these mechanical parts.
Harness the power, Dino Riders.
It was awesome. Observational studies again, architectural forms, studies in the imagination, multiple figures. So when I go to art stores, of course, like, do I buy a new book every time? Not always. Back when I was younger, even if I had a sketchbook, I'd probably want to buy another one. I'm sure you guys do that all the time, you want to get a new book. That fresh new sketchbook feels great. Back then, I did that. These days, I'm way more selective. Because yeah, I can buy off-the-shelf books all the time, but I'm always on the hunt of character books, character books. Because I can now build something with it. Yeah, these are the most recent sketches, the most recent. And going to the very last moments here on these pages, you'll start to see I'm starting to play with more based on line gesture, being a little bit lighter. This is observation. I went to a powwow. Again, more organic animals, moving, feeling this out. I was camping at the time out in Oregon. A little study of my dad's dog. And this is in New York last week. This is the most recent page. This has been a good book to me right here. So that one has been a great experience. We'll cap this off with our last travel book. This is my most recent travel book here. Fun little pen on the inside. Super thin brush pen. I'll use this for really fine detailing. So all the patches and stickers, the things I collect inside here, all filled up. Business cards, places I go to, storefronts, museums, people I meet, collect it, put it inside there. Observation. This is in Solvang, Arizona. Observation. Aaron Blaze. And then collecting experiences, places I go to. These travel books to me are, again, very specific, fun in its own way, a different kind of relationship. Carnegie, museums, Utah, Hell's Backbone, different animals and studies again observationally. Travels to Japan, picking up little maple leaves, flowers, all from Japan. So I carry it with me. These are moments in my life, year to year. I usually have one of these books a year, every annual book. So I have about 5 of these on my shelf that I've carried with me with multiple travels. Ghibli Museum that I went to, things of observation, stuff that I love, just collecting. What this shows you then is that my eyes are always observing, always looking, gathering. Even if I'm not drawing, I look at stuff and I can't help but just be inspired by it. And I want to gather it. So even though I'm not drawing on the page, I will be drawing up here a lot of times. Observation again. Ghibli Museum, great place. Go there one day, please. Okay. I love this one over here. I was walking in the gardens and parks. It was at the Imperial Palace in Tokyo. And I was walking around the different areas of gardens. Beautiful layout, design, exterior. And it was so Japan. Because it was literally like a lot of the Ghibli animations. And when I went out there in the grass plains, I was just kind of walking around and I saw these little insects like jumping around. Tiny, tiny little grasshoppers and ladybugs. And it was a literal scene. This was a shot that I saw. This was a drawing that I did right here. It was in between like layers of grass and leaves. And they were just like sitting right next to each other. Just sitting there. And they just had this like look on them. That was super innocent. And I just could not help but draw that in that kind of manner of Ghibli. A lot of the stamps, travels on metros, places I've been to, extending on, different travels, observation of people on the train, cafes, constant live drawing, fast studies. A lot of these, 5 minutes, less, quick, really quick. This is in Taiwan, last year. On the train in Taiwan, I'm drawing this from this angle live. So I'm on the train and I'm sitting there and I'm drawing myself from a different angle, okay? So that kind of practice of being able to move your camera. If I'm sitting here and I see you guys, my visual camera, I want it up there, but I'm not seeing that. But I gotta be able to visualize it somehow. That's the exercise of this. Awesome patterns, great shapes, statues and forms. Buffalo fur. I didn't grab it from the buffalo, it was just around. Respect the animals, please. Picked up sage. It's literally falling out of it right now. Sorry about that. This is only a couple of years of books that I've grabbed, and these are the ones I've grabbed off the shelf this morning before I came here. From the countless books on my shelves, these are the ones I grabbed as quick as I could and put in my bag, stuffed them in there. But I do love them, and every single one of them, they're books that you have not seen, have that same level of investment, that same level of character, that same level of interest, travel, experience, and this is me.
For more Peter Hahn, check out proko.com/perspective. Part 1 of the course will have 6 guest episodes from Peter, so there's plenty to look forward to.